And happy to be here once again. This is Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents. We have on the line Danny Thompson from Around the Association Radio. I like to say he's Orlando's best blogger, beat writer, journalist, play-by-play personnel. He's Orlando's version of Mike Tirico. Danny, how you doing?
I appreciate the intro, Chad. Always a pleasure. This is one of my favorite pods of the year. And one of my favorite shows to jump on, so I love it.
It's good. A lot of questions, a lot of stuff to cover here. I will tell you, this past weekend was, I believe, the ACC tournament and Barclays Center. We got a couple of articles up available on Late Night Parents. One being that New York is the 2018's fifth best large city for college basketball fans. How is it that Duke and all the North Carolina schools are playing up at the Barclays Center?
Well, with the ACC going to expand themselves, it seems like halfway across the country, just like most of the conferences, you want to be able to invade a television market that you don't have. Now, in the ACC's case, going to Barclays Center, because of the fact that you have Boston College and Syracuse in the conference, that's the closest you're going to get, and the Brooklyn market, is something where, the ACC wants to put their foothold in. Because, Ted, we all know, growing up in the years in New York City especially, that was Big East territory. But the Big East, breaking up and going in a different direction. At one point, there became football schools, and the non-football schools became what was left of the Big East. When the football schools left, it left that void of college basketball in the city of New York. There's nothing, nothing against St. John's or big shout outs to the LIU Brooklyn team was in the tournament this year. New York City hasn't been that hotbed for college basketball like it was in the 80s. Because, the Big East had in the 80s, St. John's, who's now coached by Chris Mullin, who was playing there, Georgetown, all those Big East schools, the Mecca was Madison Square Garden. That's the turning point, and that's the home. With the expansion of the ACC forced you have to put that tournament so you can put them in the market. But, it's just not the college basketball that we grew up with, Ted. That's showing my age. So that's why New York is the fifth best college basketball city, because the best basketball, one of the best basketball places in the world, but it doesn't have that foothold on college basketball like it should.
Okay, I can agree. I can agree with that. So I guess we'll get right to it. Wait, hold on 1 second. I got a little. Let's see. Let me turn this down.
Live radio, gotta love
it. Live. And let's see. Boom. Okay, I hit the button. So the best thing about a live podcast is you got to really be careful. Because you're sitting here, you're clicking around the screens, and I click the button to stream the show live. So, yes, it's being recorded live, but it's also available to stream live on iHeart and Spreaker right now as we speak, even though we set it for private. But that's the beauty of WordPress. But I guess the first and foremost question I was going to ask for you, since it is March Madness, and it's one of the most entertaining guessing games on the calendar, it's a time when productivity itself goes down in the office because no one's actually doing work. Everyone wants to, seem like we have educated insights into the prognostication mix. So I'm going to ask you the big question is, who are your Final Four picks?
After studying the bracket, the first rule about bracket number one is you never pick all number one seeds because, it just rarely happens. And I don't think this year will happen. I'm picking a rematch of the game that was one of the best title games that no one talks about from 2 years ago, which was North Carolina Villanova. Final Four. My Final Four includes North Carolina Villanova, Arizona, and Duke in my Final Four, and I have Villanova winning the whole thing in a rematch of 2 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, what convinced me, Ted, about Villanova was the fact of, Villanova has so much talent on that team, and Jay Wright is one of the best, not just recruiters in the country. He he's doing what a lot of teams are doing, especially with teams in these these inner city markets. Is he's keeping the local kids home, and Philadelphia is a great market for basketball, high school talent. And he's keeping those guys at home, and that's one thing. And they play with a toughness that is very rare, and they have such talented skill players. Mikal Bridges is a first-round pick, a definite lottery pick, top 6-7 pick. If you're in the New York area, you hope this guy slides to the Knicks in the first round. Jalen Brunson, who was just a phenomenal scorer, and they have so much talent on that side of the ball. Villanova is just loaded, Ted. I mean, and they're coached so well. And I think in this type of tournament, the way the bracket breaks down for Villanova, it's a very favorable draw because in their bracket, the top three other teams in their bracket, you're looking at Texas Tech, who was a very solid team in the Big 12. They're the three. Purdue was outstanding all season, but none of them had that offensive firepower. I think their biggest test could be the opening weekend once they get out of round one. No offense to LIU or Radford, but they're not going to beat Villanova. When you have to deal with Colin Sexton in the second round, and Sexton is definitely a high level NBA prospect in the first round. You get past them, then you potentially have a Sweet 16 date with West Virginia in that style. You get past that, if you get to Purdue or Texas Tech, you can beat both of them. And then after that, you have the matchup with have Duke, and then waiting in the Final Four, in the championship game. So I think it's a favorable draw for Villanova to get to the Final Four with the experience they had. They just won a national championship, 2 years ago. So this is I think the best team in the country this year, and they're not number one overall seed in the tournament, but they are the Big East champions. They're my favorite to win the whole thing.
In the last 24 hours, you are the third person to mention Villanova to me. So the other two people that mentioned it, I kind of laughed them off. But now that you're mentioning it, you hold a little bit of weight. How do you characterize the NCAA tournament's economic impact on its host cities?
The good thing about what's going on in the NCAA is they kind of changed the rules up a bit. And, nowadays, instead of just keeping sites to different regions, they've done the pod system. So they try to keep, the best teams closer to home. So, for example, in Charlotte had a pod, and with Virginia winning the ACC tournament, the original idea most people thought was putting Duke in North Carolina in Charlotte. Well, if Duke or Carolina would have won the ACC tournament, they would have been in Charlotte. Well, with Virginia winning it and Carolina getting the championship game, Carolina got a 2, and they were essentially ranked higher as a 2 on the line than Duke was. They put Duke and Carolina and Virginia in Charlotte. What does that mean? Economic impact is Charlotte, is a huge ACC country. It's huge North Carolina. And of course, Virginia and Charlottesville is a couple hours away. So all that impact will come to Charlotte. You look at the other teams, like for example, in other brackets, just by sites alone, you're looking at, for example, you go to Dallas, you'll have Tennessee out in Dallas. You have Kansas playing in Wichita. It's a short drive, so that place will be full of blue everywhere in that bracket, in that city. Duke always travels, so it doesn't really matter about where Duke goes. Villanova's playing in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's not Philadelphia, but it's in the same state. So you'll see a lot of Villanova fans make that trip to Pittsburgh in round one. And like, for example, Texas Tech is playing in Dallas. So you're going to get a lot of these schools that are closer to home having, what they call, I guess, home court advantage, which is good because it's kind of like you've earned it. And if there's a region close to you, you deserve to be closer to home. I mean, like Purdue's in Detroit, Cincinnati's in Nashville. So, the economic impact is you'll have a lot more seats filled because you have teams who are closer to home, especially the better teams, playing closer to home.
What's the difference between the early round games and, of course, the Final Four?
Well, I mean, the early round games, what makes March special is Thursday and Friday. It's watching, what team shocks another team? What 4, what 5 goes down to round 1? Is there a 2 or 3 seed or 3 seed going down? And Ted, something which has never happened in the NCAA tournament, a number 1 seed losing in the first round. A number 1's never lost in the first round. They've come close, but no top seeds ever won. There's only been a couple of 15 seeds that have won in the NCAA tournament. So what makes the first 2 days exciting? Now, nothing wrong with the Tuesday, Wednesday games, but what makes it exciting is it's one and done. There's no series. It is who is the best team at that moment. It's not going on record. You have 40 minutes, some case 45, depending if you go to overtime, to prove that you're the better team. And then guess what? If you win, you turn right back around and play less than 48 hours later. And that's how it is. And that's what makes the tournament so great, because everybody has a chance to win. All 68 teams have an equal chance to win. Some teams are just better than others.
I want to give a big shout out to Vandis, that's promoting the March Madness tip-off event in New York. It's going to be at Rattle and Hum, the West location, 306 West 39th Street. Will be the location that I will be spending some time at on Thursday. They have 4 to 7, and they kind of do it every year, Danny. Vandis is a technology firm, and let's put it this way. They spare no expense. I'll put it that way to you.
Well, Ted, since you're going out there, give them my love, and, at the same time, you just take some of this knowledge you get today and, and impress some of the people at the big event this week.
Got to ask you this question. Where do you stand on the issue of paying college athletes?
They deserve it. But the NCAA is making $10 billion. I mean, so much of economic gain with tournament, the sponsorships. You got to think CBS and the Turner Sports family spend a boatload of money over the next couple of weeks. I mean, you got to think, Ted, every game, because when we were growing up, Ted, going back the last 20 years, every game was never televised like this.
It's true.
You had to look. You had to go to your local CBS affiliate and hope your game was on, or hope somebody's game blown out so they'll switch it to another game. Now, every game is on every channel in the Turner family, it seems like. You have True TV get with the games on, on Thursday, and Tuesday and Wednesday. And then when you get to the tournament, you have CBS, you have True TV, TBS, and TNT all showing games on the first 4 days of the tournament. And then then you start going to a national field next weekend with the Final Four being, on its group of networks, Yes. So, Ted, all these games are being televised. So you can pick up one of the 4 channels on Thursday and Friday and literally watch your team play in the tournament. So there's ads everywhere. There's marketing everywhere. Yeah, do the kids deserve to play? Of course, because without the kids, there is no tournament. There is no special part of March. Yes, and I know these kids are on scholarships, and they get paid for their education, while some have to take out money to go to school. I get it. Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry, and there's no offense to the kid that makes a 4.0 on a scholarship, but that kid making a 4.0 isn't scoring 4 points a game that potentially can help the school get part of his NCAA money. There's just two different parts to it. I know that it's unfair to some, to others, but hey, these kids, they go to class, the ones that actually go to class. Sorry about the one and dones, let's be honest, because most of the one and dones don't really do class like that.
No, they don't.
But for the ones that go to class, ones that do, they go practice at 3, 4, 5 a.m. They shower, they go to class, they go back to practice, they go to study hall, they have to study, and they have a full-time job. Being a college athlete is a full-time job. The same thing with the band. Those kids have a full-time job because they're practicing playing every single day. And they're just, so yeah, Ted, these kids deserve to get something. There's, I understand that there's food, they have room and board, but hey, let the kids go out and go to a movie on their days off, or be able to, to grab something nice to eat. They deserve it. They're working their tails off at school. So yes, I think every kid should be paid something.
I think there's one spectrum. It's on one end of the spectrum or another, because you have the majority that aren't paid, and then we have the chosen few that are paid. Well, under the table, that is, and we're kind of seeing the fallout of that. Just to veer off for a second, the name came up a few days ago, and I guess some people were shocked. Most people weren't shocked. Kevin Ollie being let go of. What's your take on that?
Another NCAA potential investigation with Kevin Ollie. And what doesn't hurt the cause is that UConn went 14-8, I think 14-18 this year. In Ollie's second season, they won a national championship. He was one of the hottest coaching names, in the country at that point. You remember he was being talked about potentially coaching the Oklahoma City Thunder, at one point before they hired Billy Donovan to try to keep Kevin Durant. He's really good friends with Kevin Durant because, he was part of that team when Kevin was in Seattle. Right. And, they're very close and very tight-knit. Potentially a Washington Wizards head coach if Durant was thinking about going back home to play in D.C., which we all know that didn't happen because he's playing in Oakland with some team with a couple other guys, some average guys named Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. But, it's unfortunate that Kevin has to go through this. Like I said, if he is part of it, then it's sad on his part. But if these charges aren't, valid, it's a sad case. And, but the good news is Kevin's a good guy. He's a very smart guy. I see that if there's no wrongdoing, he should be back in the game within the next year or two.
So he was let go for just cause. So give us
just cause.
Yeah, a breakdown. I mean, because when you read it, just cause, wrong place, wrong time, or there's some evidence somewhere.
Well, the university is part of an investigation. Of course, nowadays every school is being investigated for either players being paid, under the table stuff. UConn didn't go into full detail why Kevin was let go. It was a just cause situation, but with so many different situations going on in the NCAA, it could be anything. But more likely, it's something involving players, recruiting, and the part with UConn is that UConn is so used to winning that being 14-18 is not a good benchmark. But being in a conference that's not a basketball conference, it hurts when it comes to recruiting. They went from the Big East, Ted, that the Big East in '95, Ted, I know you remember that championship game, Georgetown and UConn, Ray Allen, Allen Iverson. You go back in the early part of the 2000s, Richard Hamilton, Khalid Al-Amin. I mean, a couple years ago, Kemba Walker, Jeremy Lamb, they were part of that national championship team. What the underlying effects of all those teams were, they all were Big East schools. They all were part of the Big East, which was primarily a basketball conference. UConn is a conference that makes no sense. They're an American conference. No offense to the American conference, because I cover UCF, who's in that conference. It's a hodgepodge of schools that are just literally stretched out everywhere. They go as far north as UConn, as far west as Wichita State, and as far south as UCF and South Florida. And there's schools in between. So there's really no geographical rival. There's not that Syracuse, that Georgetown you look forward to playing, Seton Hall, even Boston College. None of that. And that hurts recruiting because, I'm sorry, you go to Hartford on a Thursday night with Seth Greenberg, so you go to Hartford on a Thursday night with college basketball, and you see ECU or Marshall, that's not going to attract the top 50 recruit. That top 50 recruit's looking at, okay, let me go down a couple hours and see what's going on, in Syracuse. Or Syracuse is playing Duke on ESPN on Monday night, ACC. So that's part of it. UConn's not winning. Now, UConn was in the tournament, and, this investigation was swept under the rug until the end of the season. So
we're going to play Fact or Fiction in regards to a previous question on the economic impact.
Okay.
Fact or Fiction. $6.3 billion in corporate losses due to unproductive workers during March Madness.
I agree. True.
The 2018 Final Four projected economic impact on the host city, which is San Antonio, Texas, is $135 million.
35 million?
135 million.
I agree. And it's going to be even higher if Texas Tech or Texas makes the Final Four. But agreed.
71,000 fans are expected to visit San Antonio for the Final Four event. Fact or fiction?
Even higher than that. Fact. It's going to be even higher than that.
3,000 volunteers are expected for the Final Four.
Agreed. True.
14 cities will host the 2018 NCAA basketball tournament.
let's see, Dayton, and then you have the 8 pod sites. That's 9. Before you said 14's the number? Yes, it is. 14's number. That's true.
The annual impact on Wichita, Kansas, is $10 million.
Correct, because of Kansas.
Gotcha. All right. I just wanted to play quick fact or fiction with you. We kind of touched upon it. What are the biggest issues facing the NCAA today that you just didn't describe?
I think the biggest issues now, the tournament selection was just terrible on Sunday. The logic behind some of these teams who didn't get in and the teams who got in make absolutely no sense. And no offense to the committee, but the committee's reasoning behind why teams like Oklahoma State or USC or even St. Mary's in their exclusion from the tournament, Notre Dame, their exclusion, and for teams like Oklahoma, no offense to Oklahoma or Texas or some of the other schools that questionably got in, just make no sense. Like Oklahoma State, they beat Kansas. They beat Kansas twice. They beat West Virginia. They beat, 8 or 9 tournament teams, and they are not in the tournament. But Oklahoma, on the other hand, won 18 games. Yes, they have Trae Young. Yes, they faltered down the stretch, but they got a 10 seed in the tournament. Syracuse, no offense to Syracuse, they struggled down the stretch, but a 28-win St. Mary's team is sitting at home. So I think they have to fix this system. The quadrant system when it comes to win totals doesn't make sense to me. Maybe year number 2 they figure this out, or in some cases say let's expand this tournament again to 96 teams, which cause even more of a headache.
I saw on Twitter there was a lot of commentary, and a lot of it was negative, about the selection show being on TBS. And it was the first time a selection show was happening that was a non-CBS related channel, I believe, in 36 years. So last time since 1982. What was your overall review of the TBS selection show?
I give it a solid B. It was, they had some graphical errors. They were a little behind on, the graphics and everything else. But Ernie Johnson is always a professional, and Greg Gumbel, they're great at what they do. You agree? I disagree with them putting it on, on cable. It should be on CBS because that's the home. That's where the Final Four is. That's where One Shining Moment's played. I don't hear One Shining Moment on TBS. I hear Luther, and that's Big Luther, on CBS. Okay, One Shining Moment starts with the tournament show on CBS. So they should revert themselves and go back next year.
So give me your take on Grant Hill and the debacle with Mountain Dew and why it kind of pissed off Coca-Cola, NCAA, TBS, CBS, and everyone else.
Pretty simple. Coca-Cola is a sponsor of the NCAA tournament. Very simple. Could you imagine Peyton Manning holding up Pizza Hut during an NFL commercial before he left Papa John's? Could you imagine Michael Jordan drinking Powerade? Seriously, it's to that point. It's like, Grant Hill is drinking Mountain Dew on a show that's based on Turner, with the national corporate sponsor of the NCAA tournament is Coca-Cola. I don't, there's just, the only thing Grant could have done worse was knock down 2 Pepsis in the process. Do it. If you're going to do it right.
Did you see during the show when Ernie Johnson was promoting Pizza Hut in the studio and munching on it? It was so forced. And it was so awkward, and I just didn't like to see Ernie Johnson in that light.
Well, Ted, I mean, yeah, it's a forced thing, but Ted, we're both wrestling fans. How many times have we watched the WWE, which is sponsored by by Mountain Dew, and the Mountain Dew is sitting on the announce table,
Yes.
never touched,
never touched,
never ever touched. I mean, that Mountain Dew, like the kickstart's been sitting there for months. So it kind of feels forced, but hey, Ernie got a check for it. I'm sure that, as he's munching down that meat lovers pizza on national TV, I'm pretty sure he's thinking, man, that check hits the bank on Tuesday, so I can pay the card note on Wednesday.
So, we hope. We definitely hope. It kind of felt like Ernie was selling his soul a little bit, but we'll leave it there. This is Late Night Parents with March Madness New Sings podcast, featuring Danny Thompson from Orlando, Florida. So my next question, and it was on the tip of my tongue, and I just forgot it. So it talked about TBS. We were talking about during pre-pro. We were talking about Turner Sports, the Turner Sports package, and I think I had mentioned to you because there's a lot going back and forth with AT&T buying Time Warner and it being held up in the federal government because of the president seems to have a hard-on with CNN. So I posed, this is what the proposal I gave to you about 2 days ago. I said, what would be your take on Apple purchasing Turner Sports?
It would be game-changing because with Turner having access to the NBA and the NCAA, they also have Major League Baseball playoffs. I think they do NASCAR. That would be game-changing. Can you imagine what Apple would do with the NBA package? Because Turner has a ton of NBA games. Ted, Apple's always been the forerunner when it comes to, technology. And you put those major sports, can you imagine what Apple would do at NASCAR and bring up the popularity, Ted, out of the South? That would put NASCAR at a whole different level. You can imagine what Apple can do with with their technology when it comes to NASCAR, speed, distance, basketball games. Can you imagine the camera angles you get on your Apple, or being able to watch games on your Apple TV or your Apple phone, your Apple Watch, your iPhones, your MacBooks? Can you imagine what they would do at baseball? The different things you can do in the middle of the broadcast with Apple technology? It would be completely game-changing. And you have to think, if you're the NBA, you're thinking to yourself, hey, let me jump on this Apple train if that's seriously what happens before any other sport does it. And then, hey, Turner at that point in Apple, they're going to target themselves on the next major sport. Ted, let's be honest with you. And I think they'll target themselves on Major League Baseball and potentially the NHL, because the NHL doesn't have a national partner. No offense to NBC, but NBC doesn't show enough NHL games for me to call it its official sponsor, because they show it every other week at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, nothing throughout the week. Can you imagine Apple saying, you know what, you got a package with iTunes, you get the players involved in it? It would just be brilliant if Apple's willing to spend the money on it.
And I'm sure that package alone would be a piece of change. It definitely would be a piece of change. So tell me this much. I mean, I know we veered off from March Madness, but I wanted to talk about Turner with you, and with it being in Atlanta and kind of, being in your sweet spot a little bit. So what does it take, or what would it take for Turner to be a major player? We know they're a major player with the NBA. They have their feet also planted in MLB. But how does it take, how does an organization like that take another step? Because they're not on the same playing field as an ESPN. Well, no one really is, but they're not even on the same playing field as a Fox or Fox Sports.
I think what takes Turner to the next level is they decide to create their own sports channel. They use their flagship networks to broadcast their sports, TBS and T, True TV at times. They use different, television. They they use different television channels to promote their sports. I think if Turner had full-fledged sports channel with the personalities they have, you create a full channel. You have your version of like a Sports Center with different anchors. You're showing games from all across the sports that you cover.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be game changing. And like I said, on top of that, you team that channel up to Apple, it's game over.
Okay. I mean, I could see it because, like you said, the problem that everyone has every year with the Final Four, and what they might run into on a Thursday or Friday when a majority of the games are played, you're going to have 12 to 14 games played on each of those days. Is you can't find a channel that your specific team is on
unless you research it. So I mean, I think Turner has enough sports to do it. It's that I think you need that perfect partner to help you not recoup some of that cost that you're going to spend by creating your own channel because there's so much behind it. But I think if Turner did it right, you can create a sports network that blows ESPN and or the other groups away.
So would you think linear broadcast, linear cable channel, or would you think digital, something totally like over-the-top channel?
I think you go digital. Everybody else is I think you do something different. You try to appeal to as many people as possible. So I think over there is the best option in my book.
Okay.
You go over the air, you get everybody involved. Like I said, Ted, if you imagine if you had a deal with Apple and that Turner Sports channel automatically comes with your brand new iPhone.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. That'd be pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and not only that, but I mean, Bleacher Report is nothing to sneeze at. I think they're getting at least 1 million page hits. Or
that's what I'm saying, Ted. If you think about it, all those personalities that work for Bleacher Report, they could be on the Turner Sports channel,
right?
Because they have a team site for everything.
See, but that's what I'm saying. At some point, they either Turner or Apple need to hire you. Turner or Apple needs to hire me, and we can definitely make this together because definitely NBC kind of whiffed. But I mean, I understand the NHL that the NBC is only paying the NHL package $200 million, so I can see why it's being covered so sparsely. But as we segue from that, I want to go quickly into a question: should daily fantasy sports be considered gambling?
No. The reason being is that it's individual players. It's not teams, it's players. So, and it's a daily game. So it's not one player. You're just having a group of players. It's a simple game of players. As long as his team's not involved in it, it's fine. I don't consider it wrong.
So, I've got to ask you, what in your mind makes a good college basketball fan?
I think nowadays, in order to be a top-notch fan, to be honest with you, you got to start with recruiting. You got to start looking at your schools from the high school perspective, because guys aren't 3 or 4 year guys anymore. The best players in college don't stay 3 or 4 years anymore. They're gone after a year. Some of them nowadays, with countries, offering these kids money to go play pro ball overseas for a year because the NBA doesn't allow, high school kids to come in anymore. You're not going to be able to get the best talent anymore. So now you've got to become like every other coach and be an AAU scout just so you know who's coming into your program. So I think the ones who are the best knowledgeable college basketball fans are the ones who know high school basketball. It's a good thing and a bad thing. You got to know your local kids, because in a lot of cases, those are the guys that are going to be at your school in the near future. So I think the first step is to start watching high school basketball, because that's the best way you're going to see talent, because most of these guys are one and done nowadays.
Hey, Danny, I want to hit you with another March Madness fact. And I'm going to say it's the March Madness stats and facts. I have $8.98 million. That's the 2018 salary for college basketball's highest paid coach, and that would be none other than Coach K, versus $1.4 million combined for Duke's president and the state's governor. Does that even make sense?
let's say this. How many T-shirts has the president of Duke sold? Or how many jerseys?
Next to none.
How much has Coach K sold in jerseys? Or paraphernalia that's Duke basketball related?
I don't even think we can come up with a number.
Exactly. So is Coach K worth every penny? Duke is winning. Duke is on a national scale on a consistent basis. They've been a winning program the 95% of Coach K's tenure. They're always in the mix for the national championship in basketball. They're always in the mix when it comes to getting the best recruits in basketball. So that means they're always exposed everywhere they go. You know, most kids that get opportunity to play at Duke, they take the opportunity. So Coach K brings in so much money to this university. $10 million a year isn't enough. He deserves every penny of it because they win. You know, if he was getting paid $10 million and they were a 20-win team every year, I'd be disappointed. But Coach K's teams win anywhere from 25 to 30, or even the national championship every single year.
So I'm going to say the number $10.4 billion. That's the amount wagered on the 2017 NCAA men's basketball tournament, and $10.1 billion was illegal. True or false?
I think true to the 10.4 total, but the 10.1 billion illegal, that's got to be false. If it's not, wow.
It is true. So I got the number 18 times. The difference between the average NBA's rookie salary, which is $2.36 million, and a D1 men's basketball scholarship for the year, $130K. This is, once again, the reason why we got to pay these young men.
Mm-hmm.
I said,
because if you don't pay it, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose them to Australia and Japan and China, willing to pay these American high school kids. You know, I think Australia's offering the top high school players $80,000 a year to come play a professional year in Australia.
Is that going to
be the next growing trend?
Is that going to be the new norm? Mm-hmm. Is that going to be the new norm?
Tell you know what? If you're talking about getting a top flight player, you know, a high school player, some of these kids are in inner city situations where, you know, their basketball is that kid and that family's only way out. And I'm sorry, now, unless these coaches are paying these kids or getting paid at the table, Ted, I'm sorry, you can't feed a struggling family on a college scholarship for a year until you go pro. But if somebody's handing you $80,000 in cash and you're getting nothing but a scholarship, it's hard to turn down when your mom is working, or your mom or your dad or even your family, you know, is barely making ends meet. You know, some come from a single parent household, some come from a dual parent household. Some kids don't even have parents. So every situation is different. But these leagues are going to get these kids, either one, that can't qualify academically for college because they don't have the right, you know, tools to be in the classroom, or you get those kids that don't have the money and doing it to save their family. It's hard to turn down $80,000 in cash when you don't have it.
What do you think is the best city for college basketball fans and why? And don't give me the Homer, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham. Don't give me that. I mean, you can give it to me, but I really didn't want you to. But go ahead. What's your thoughts on that city?
Not counting the Triangle, which is, you know, to me the basketball havens. I'll give you a few places.
Okay.
How about that? The best places for college basketball and college basketball towns, you know, like for the Triangle is one of them, which is Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. You know, when you're in NC State country, Duke country, and of course the best blue, North Carolina blue, those towns are college basketball nuts. Now you go up a bit, go to Lexington. That is basketball crazy. The Kentucky Wildcats outdraw the majority of the NBA teams by arena size, by number of dates, you know, on a regular basis. That Lexington is a professional town with college kids. You know, and Kentucky over the last few years have been playing. You know, some of those Kentucky teams, Ted, can probably make be a 7 or 8 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs because that's how talented they are. That's an amazing town. They bleed basketball seriously down there. We talked about Kansas earlier. In Lawrence, that is one of the best environments for a college, playing at Allen Fieldhouse. Those Kansas fans are a rabid fan base. Other places, I mean, when Syracuse is rocking, Ted, when the Qs are good, playing at the Carrier Dome, great college basketball town. Can you see all that sea of orange inside the Carrier Dome after all these years? They still haven't made a basketball facility. Why? Because when Syracuse is good, they're putting 30,000 people inside the Carrier Dome. And it's an experience where I was totally like nothing else. You go out west and you look at UCLA's Pauley Pavilion, even though it's Los Angeles, the love that people give the Bruins out there is just incredible. Go further out. Arizona's a great place, for college basketball. We're not going to show what's going to happen going forward with the investigation on Sean Miller, and where it happened. They lost all their major recruits because, Arizona is under serious investigation. Wow, other great places to watch college basketball. I mean, even going to the smaller schools, Wichita State's a great place to watch basketball, out in Wichita, Kansas. Louisville before, the situation with Pitino. Those guys, they had great kids go out there, and the Yum Center, if it isn't Freedom Hall, but it's bigger, it's louder. And, I mean, Ted, we can go on for hours. I mean, Michigan State, out in Lansing, that town's college basketball crazy. Purdue up in West Lafayette, those is a rabid fan base up there. I mean, when it's good, imagine going to those games in the Comcast Center, even going back to Coles Fieldhouse when it was open. So, Ted, there's so many great places to watch college basketball. Even Villanova starting to get back to being that place where it's great to watch college basketball again. So, Ted, I mean, there's so many places to watch great college basketball, and I probably missed about 15 to 20 that were no-brainers in this situation.
One serious question before we start to wrap up, and I'm going to just throw this out here. Coach K, yes, greatest of all time. Coach K was, stood up for his players and you can assign all different types of accolades and greatness to Coach K's name. But is he now, has he evolved? Is he any different than John Calipari with the one and done situation?
I mean, he's now recruiting. I mean, had to evolve with the times. It's sad because it's Coach K and Roy Williams, a lot of these old school coaches never recruited the one and done players. But that's, after watching what John Calipari has done in Kentucky, and he's turned into an NBA factory, at some point you have to. You've got to keep up with the Joneses in order for you to win. So, as long as you still run a clean program and you're able to get some of these, the kids that want to take over to your school, and you're going to have to build from that. But, yeah, Coach K's had to recruit one and dones because if you want to win the national championship every year, you got to have at least two special players and, at least one or two coming back to be successful going forward.
Final basketball question. Do you have any tips for how basketball fans can enjoy the sport without breaking the bank?
Easy. There's three things you do. Number one, the schedule's already out. So you take a look at your schedule, you check your PTO time. At that point, you wonder, can you call out of work on Thursday or Friday? And if you can, you call out. If not, you find some way to be sick, and somehow you stay home. The NCAA tournament is all about trying to save as much money as possible. Listen, with the early games, you get 3 or 4 of your buddies to come over, and either A, you guys all split the cost, or B, everybody brings something. So somebody brings the beer, somebody brings the pizza, somebody brings whatever they need to. Everybody brings something that's for value that's important. Then you sit there, and the game starts at 12:15, and the final game starts at 9:40. 9, maybe 10 o'clock, depending on what region you're in. And guess what? You're in front of a TV from noon until 1 a.m., and you get about an hour break, maybe 30-minute breaks before the 7 o'clock or late game start. So the best way to do it is just, you potluck it. Everybody brings a dish, or everybody just chips in, and you guys all order stuff. You don't have to break the bank to be, to enjoy March Madness, because hey, you could take the day off from yourself at home, eat what you got in the freezer, and be good for 14 hours.
Danny, no one does this better than you. I got to tell you. So, got to ask you before we get you on out of here. Got to ask you a fatherhood related question. You have a lovely daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely daughter. Tell me about a moment that. Well, tell me about a recent moment that where you could see where your little girl is, growing up, and you could see where you're molding her.
It's funny. My daughter and I, over the last, bit of time, we've bonded, and we bonded in a way that that's different. We started to go to church, and something that when I started going back myself, I wanted to include my daughter in, and it's to the point now where I pick her up on, I pick her up and, she's saying, Daddy, can we go to church today? And it'd be a Friday night. I say, well, no, sweet pea, we can't go, no, Apple, we can't go to church until Sunday. And she'll keep asking me about going to church until Sunday. And, and then when we go to church, depending on what church we go to down here in the Central Florida area, she'll ask to speak to the pastor, or she'll ask to see, whoever's preaching that Sunday. And she goes up to that person, gives them a big hug, and they talk to her, and she'll say how happy she is, and she wants to come back. So I think the thing that something like that is the fact that me starting to learn more about, get deeper into my spirituality and understanding of the higher power of God, and and what He does, and now I'm able to share that with my daughter, and she's saying the same things, and and wanting to learn more. There's nothing more as a parent, that because as parents, we don't get everything right, and we don't probably get 90% of the stuff right. But if I take myself anywhere, I know that when she mentioned about going to church, that I helped put myself in that position. So I think something like that would be it.
And that is definitely a cool moment, because I can tell you that much, where something that I think you just explained the situation where, as we were saying before, you're molding her where it's a routine. I don't want to say ritual, but it's a routine, and it's a routine that she's gotten used to and that she's comfortable with, and that's something you mm-hmm. guys that kind of links you guys together, and that's definitely good. So, answer this question: where can we find your writings? Where can we listen to your show? How do we get in contact with you? Where are you available on social media? How do we find out more about Around Association Radio? And it sounds like, you're well versed that you can kind of bob and weave inside and outside of basketball. So that was a crazy common question, but there you go.
All right. So social media wise, on Twitter at DT_30. So that's the main Twitter handle. I talk all sports on there. Even a couple pop culture things there if I get dragged in conversations, Mr. Hicks. So I do discuss those things on social media on Twitter. You can check out AroundTheAssociation.com. And for those who want a different version of the tournament, how to watch the tournament, before tip-off Thursday, I'll have separate articles that are starting to come out sometime tomorrow and definitely on Wednesday, early part of Thursday, that will break down each of the brackets for those who do not know anything about the teams in the brackets, what NBA guys are in these brackets, what games to watch, what to look for each of the teams. Like I said, this is the time of year, Ted, where common college basketball fans who haven't watched literally 12 seconds of college basketball mm-hmm. will be so-called experts or say this is the time they start watching. So I want to provide a guide for each of the four regions, a good starting point so that when you go to the office cooler on Thursday, you have something to contribute to the conversation. On top of that, we have the mock draft coming out this week that's pre-tournament that has the top 50 prospects. So I'm not doing anything when it comes to where guys are going. I'm giving you the top 50 prospects that potentially could be in the draft this year. That's going to be on AroundTheAssociation.com. The podcast, I'm recording 2 mini pods actually on Wednesday One's going to be NBA related podcast. One's also going to be a college basketball oriented podcast. And, I'm going to be contributing to Florida National News throughout the NCAA tournament, also with my Magic coverage over there as well, too. And, every other outlet, that I contribute to. And follow me, like I said, on aroundassociation.com as well as on Facebook as well, too. And Ted, this podcast is always fun because you don't always ask sports questions. There's always something else, which makes it great.
Hey, one last question to close it out. Where is Kirk Cousins going to? Is he going to the Jets? Is he going to Vikings? Is he just going to the highest bidder?
Right now, the question is, there's not as many teams bidding on Kirk Cousins as once was. So, everybody seems to be dropping out of the market. When the Browns dropped off last week when they traded for Tyrod Taylor, now the word is Buffalo is stockpiling picks to potentially trade for, Nick Foles instead of the Buffalo. Garoppolo got the contract out there. Bortles got his extension. So the quarterbacking options for Kirk Cousins are becoming smaller and smaller. But, Jets, Vikings, Broncos are all still in the hunt. So I think he ends up I think he takes the best option, which I think it'll be Minnesota. I think if Minnesota really wants to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to throw the ball down the field. No offense to Case Keenum, or Teddy Bridgewater or Sam Bradford, but none of those three quarterbacks are Kirk Cousins. And Cousins has that wonderful offensive line in Minnesota and that really, really good running game. It might be his best fit since, the Jaguars decide to invest more in Blake Bortles than chasing, Kirk Cousins for a Super Bowl.
So the one team that I've been holding out hope for is the Arizona Cardinals. There's no chance?
Never say never. But Larry Fitzgerald's getting older. If I'm Kirk Cousins, there's not that guy to replace Larry Fitzgerald just yet. So I don't think Arizona's. It's a much needed spot, but I don't know if they have the firepower for Cousins. Like I said, him going to Denver makes Denver a Super Bowl contender because they still have plenty of offensive weapons, and that defense, they're getting a little bit older, but you got a year or so in that window. So Minnesota's a great option. We talked about Houston earlier. Like you said, we talked about Minnesota. We talked about the Jets. The Jets going to have the most money left since Cleveland bowed out. So I kind of want him. I kind of see him in Minnesota over all the rest of the places.
All right. As we can see, it's much more than basketball. Danny, want to thank you for joining us for this podcast. And as always, we're going to be in touch with you in the future.
Thanks, Ted. We'll talk probably after the Final Four.
You got it. Take care, brother.
You too.